Yes, indeedy, folks. It's the beer drinker's guide to the great wahoo. And now, an amazing story. An amazing story of coming back to life after 2,000 years. The story begins with King Herod the Great. Herod was appointed king of Judea in 37 BCE, which would be about 2,050 years ago. He reigned for 34 years. What Herod did, and what he was famous for, was building monumental structures. One of those monumental structures was the magnificent Second Temple. The Romans ran a huge empire covering many lands with many different faiths. They were also polytheists. So, knowing that there are many different gods was not a problem with them. Therefore, they built temples to all the different gods of all the different faiths throughout their empire. This magnificent structure, of course, needed a solid, flat foundation. A great wall was built around the construction site. It was filled in, and upon that flat fill, the temple was built. When Jewish zealots revolted in 70 current era, the Romans came in and decided that one way to put down the rebellion was to destroy this temple. The only thing they left was a small section of the western wall that used to support the grounds. This small section of the western wall is now called the Wailing Wall, where people go to wail, to mourn the loss of this great temple. Throughout the land, Herod also built bathhouses, arenas, and 11 great fortresses. One of these was Masada. Just being able to see the ruins today leaves us with inspiration for what the human spirit can do when it sets out to accomplish something. In 1973, when they were excavating this site at Masada, something very extraordinary was discovered. This something extraordinary was a jar, and inside that jar were 2,000-year-old seeds. The jar and the dry climate had preserved these seeds well. Radiocarbon dating put their age at 2,000 years, give or take 50 years. Further tests revealed that these were the seeds of a Judean date palm. When the Romans first invaded the area of Judea, the date palms were growing vast and wide, and up to 80 feet tall. Many of the cities of the area had grown because of the commercial use of these palms. The dates were said to be particularly sweet and delicious, and they were also credited with being filled with medicinal and aphrodisiac properties. This coin was minted after the Jewish rebellion to commemorate the conquest of the weeping Judea underneath the palm and in front of the conquering Roman. After the conquest, the palms were ignored and eventually died out 1,500 years ago. These ancient seeds that came out of the jar once again saw sunlight and were very quickly stored away. In 2005, some 33 years after they had been discovered, Some of these precious seeds were taken to Kibbutz Keturah, and my apologies if I'm mispronouncing your favorite kibbutz for those who know better how to pronounce Keturah. Here at Kibbutz Keturah, Dr. Elaine Soloway took 3 of these precious seeds and worked with them to try to get them to germinate. To break their dormancy, she soaked them in 95-degree water for 24 hours. She then put them in a warm solution of hormones and acids meant to further let them break their dormancy. After 6 hours, she again put them into warm water and this time soaked them for 12 hours in a fertilizer. She then let the water cool and removed the seeds. Dr. Soloway had carefully prepared a potting soil, and into 3 pots she put these seeds 1 centimeter under the soil. And then, basically, everybody hoped for the best for these precious ancient gifts. The seeds were found in 1973. They were planted on January 25th, 2005. 6 weeks later, on March 5th, Dr. Soloway was examining the pots and discovered that one of them had cracked soil. By March 18th, a small pale shoot was visible. By March 22nd, 2 small, flat, pale leaves were visible in the soil. The plant has been called the Methuselah palm, after the oldest living person that was recorded in the Torah. Methuselah was said to have lived 969 years. So far, the Methuselah palm has done 2,000 plus. Before this successful germination by Dr. Soloway, the oldest human regermination of a seed was a 1,200-year-old lotus from China. As of spring 2009, this beautiful palm is now over 6.5 feet tall. If it turns out to be a female, and if it turns out to be an ace female, then we might be able to breed it and bring back at least part of this ancient species. One advantage would be coming up with unknown traits for solving medical problems and disease resistance. But I, personally, am just quite satisfied with the beauty and the mystery of this 2,000-year-old seed coming back to breathe and to share the sunshine of life. I want to give a special thanks to Dr. Sarah Salon, Director, and Guy Eisner, photographer, of the Natural Medicine Research Center at the Hadassah Medical Organization, Jerusalem, for their help in coming up with this piece.
let's get into old MacDonald's overalls and play E-I-E-I-O. It's East Idaho. East Idaho. Wow. It's not a very long drive, folks, and there are some mighty interesting things to check out over on the great eastern side of Idaho.
In past episodes of EIEIO, we've gone and looked at the beautiful Henry Fork country, and then we headed down south of Pocatello, checking out beautiful southeast Idaho and the amazing flood that happened at Red Rock Pass. From Red Rock Pass, we went over and checked out Preston, had a lovely dinner at a 50s cafe, and then came back through Dalton and Weston and up to check out Deep Creek Reservoir. It was a beautiful day in October. After a short jaunt on the freeway, we ended our last episode in beautiful Malad City. Today, we are going to leave civilization and take highways 38 and 37. This is some real backcountry, a beautiful valley out in the middle of nowhere, Idaho. The valley that Malad City is in is as pretty as any farmland in Idaho. And then we cross the Holbrook summit, elevation 6,104 feet. From here, we're pretty much out on our own in a desert valley. A desert valley, yes, but wide and available for agriculture. Well, folks, you know your beer drinking guide. and he cannot resist taking pictures of what it's like to drive those great, narrow, winding roads. Despite the instability of the car and my car cam, I hope you enjoy the ride. And here we run into the historic sign for Twin Springs. This is about 2/3 of the way between Holbrook and Roy. Don't plan on stopping at a 7-Eleven in either Holbrook or Roy, folks. They're basically a collection of houses. And perhaps plural is pushing it. These big springs were the only place within 22 miles that there was water in anything except the wettest season. They found a cutoff through here going to the gold fields in California in 1849. People would go out of their way, traveling at night, doing anything they could to get to this spot where they would have water for camping. as I remember, this is Roy. As we travel up the valley, the farms become more and more numerous, and it looks like the growing is a little more abundant. Indeed, compared to Holbrook and Roy, Rockland is a regular megapolis. From Rockland, it is another 13 miles of beautiful Idaho Valley Road up to the Snake River Plain at American Falls. At American Falls, we had a little time before it got dark, so we ran over and checked out the American Falls Dam and what is left of the falls. The pelicans certainly seem to enjoy whatever comes out from the power plant. I suppose that there are some ground-up fish in there. Just downstream from the dam, we see fishermen enjoying the fish that aren't ground up. The way down to the river is a rather steep climb. American Falls has always been used for its energy. I suppose there were mills here before electric plants, and electric plants started being developed as soon as electricity and the transmission of it became developed. In 1902, with the ability to transport electricity further and further on lines, they developed a power plant for Pocatello at this site. Today, we don't think too much about transporting electricity the 26 miles between American Falls and Pocatello, but there was a time when line loss would make that completely impractical, and when they had solved those problems, they were able to build power plants here and begin distributing the power. Over the years, this site has seen pretty much all the latest technology installed in order to pull the power out of these falls. As we can see here above the power plant, this site has also been a major transportation center. There is a road that goes over the dam, another road going the opposite direction that has been built in front of the dam, and years before, in 1881, the railroad decided that American Falls was the most logical place to jump across the Snake River. This structure, of course, was not the bridge they built in the 1800s. This bridge was put in the 1970s when they rebuilt the original American Falls Dam. Here in front of the dam, the Oregon Short Line uses this point to cross the Snake River. I have some confidence in the railroad continuing to carry trains across this point. I'm not just sure how long their communication wires are going to hang on, however. A sweet little thing finally met the man of her dreams. She was so in love. It turns out he was a good Catholic. So, she didn't know much about Catholics, but she did end up being patient and waiting for their wedding night. And that night, she went with great anticipation, put on a sexy negligee, and went into the bedroom. He wasn't there. She went into the living room, and there he was in the middle of the room, sleeping on an air bed. She said, "Honey, aren't you going to come to our bed?" And he said, "But sweetheart, you know that it's Lent." She started to cry in frustration, but then she just got angry. "Why, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard," she said. "Who did you lend it to, and for how long?" And that's this week's Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo. Thanks for watching. See you next week. And in the meantime, keep celebrating the Great Wahoo.